When my own brother spat in my face over a $480,000 family debt, I thought that was the final break between us. I believed I would never hear from him again. What I didn't expect was that he would one day walk straight into my hotel, begging the staff for a room, without knowing the owner he needed help from was me. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Avery Holt. I'm 34 years old, and I've always been the kind of person who keeps her head down, works hard, and tries to do right by the people she loves. I grew up believing family came first, no matter what. I never imagined that the people I trusted the most would be the ones to turn their backs on me. For years, I tried to help my family in every way I could. I wasn't flashy. I didn't brag. I simply worked, saved, and supported them whenever things got tough. My older brother, Carson, was always the risk-taker, the one with big plans that never seemed to work out. When he fell deep into debt, I stepped in because I couldn't watch my family lose everything. I paid the entire amount, $480,000, quietly and without asking for praise. I thought it would bring us closer. Instead, it pushed us further apart. Carson said I made him look weak. He rejected my help, denied the debt, and made the rest of the family believe I was lying. That betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever faced. And yet, life has a strange way of circling back, especially when the truth finally has its moment. Growing up, my home was split in ways no one said out loud, but everyone felt. My older brother, Carson, was the center of everything. He wasn't just the firstborn, he was the favorite. My parents praised every move he made, even when his choices caused trouble. If he messed up, they rushed to cover it. If he wanted something, they found a way to give it to him. He lived with a confidence that came from knowing someone would always rescue him. I lived in the same house, but in a different world. I didn't ask for much. I kept my focus on school, small goals, and doing things the right way. I wasn't loud or demanding. I didn't want to cause problems. I just worked, studied, and tried to stay steady. While Carson ran wild with ideas and plans, I stayed grounded. I learned early that if something needed to be done, I had to do it myself. Even as kids, the contrast was clear. If Carson broke something, my parents called it an accident. If I made a mistake, they called it carelessness. When he skipped responsibilities, they said he was creative. When I stayed organized, they teased me for being too serious. I didn't complain, but I noticed every moment. The older we got, the stronger the divide became. Carson took bigger risks, believing someone would always fix the damage. My parents stepped in each time, paying bills he ignored or smoothing over fights he started. They said they were helping him find his path. Meanwhile, I took quiet jobs, saved what I earned, and stayed in my own lane. No one saw the tension building. No one understood how much it hurt to watch one person lift it up while the other carried the weight. Carson's big project collapsed faster than anyone imagined. He had started a construction company with bold promises and borrowed money he never should have touched. When the business fell apart, the people he owed came after everything tied to his name. What shocked me most was learning that he had used our family's house as part of the paperwork. If the balance wasn't cleared, the place where we grew up would be taken. I found out about it through a quiet call from someone who handled the loan files. They told me the deadline was close and that the amount was huge. $480,000. Hearing that number made my chest tighten, but losing the house would have destroyed everyone. I couldn't let that happen, even after years of watching him make choices without thinking about anyone else. I met with the people involved, signed what needed to be signed, and covered the full amount from my own savings and investments. I didn't tell a soul. I didn't do it for applause or attention. I did it because I knew what losing that home would do to my family. It held memories none of us could replace. Before I walked out of the office, I made one request. I asked the man who managed the paperwork to keep my name out of everything. I didn't want Carson feeling exposed or judged. When I spoke to him later, I only said the problem was handled. I told him I didn't want the rest of the family hearing about it. I wanted to protect him from shame, even if he had caused the situation himself. All I asked was silence. No thanks. No repayment. Just privacy. I thought that small request would be easy for him. I was wrong. When the crisis was finally settled, I expected at least a calm conversation. I didn't need praise or attention, but I hoped he would show a little understanding. Instead, the moment I spoke to Carson, everything twisted in a way I never imagined. His voice was sharp, almost angry, as if I had crossed some invisible line. He said my actions were calculated, that I stepped in only to make myself look superior. He acted as though I had created a problem instead of preventing one. I tried to explain why I stepped forward, but he refused to listen. He said I interfered where I didn't belong. Then he tossed out a claim that stunned me to my core. He said I made the whole situation sound worse than it was. He insisted I exaggerated everything just to gain sympathy. Hearing him talk like that felt like someone kicked the air out of my chest. It didn't stop there. He went straight to our parents with his version of events. He told them I was stirring up trouble, that I was using money to control him. He made it sound like I wanted to embarrass him. By the time I arrived to speak for myself, the damage was done. They looked at me with tired eyes, as if I had brought stress into the house for no reason. Instead of asking questions or hearing me out, they stood by him without hesitation. They said I should stop involving myself in matters that didn't belong to me. They said I was thinking only of myself. For years I stayed quiet, stayed steady, stayed supportive, but in that moment, none of that mattered. Their decision cut deeper than anything he had said. It showed me where I stood in their eyes. And that truth changed everything. After everything that happened, something inside me finally broke. I had spent my whole life trying to keep peace, trying to hold the family together, but there comes a moment when a person realizes they can't keep standing where they're not wanted. I stopped calling, stopped visiting, and stepped out of the picture without making noise. It wasn't anger that pushed me away, it was exhaustion. I needed space to breathe. I packed up my small apartment, loaded my car, and drove until the familiar roads disappeared. I crossed state lines with no clear plan, only a determination to start fresh. I rented a quiet place in a town where no one knew my name. For the first time, I let myself think about what I wanted instead of what everyone else expected. Work became my anchor. I found a steady job, saved every extra dollar, and kept my focus on building something of my own. During that time, I met a business partner who shared ideas about reviving a small hotel that had been losing money for years. The property had charm, but it needed direction. After many long nights and careful steps, we took over the operations. I put in everything I had: time, effort, savings, and faith. The risk paid off. Slowly, the place found new life. Guests returned, word spread, and the numbers climbed. When my partner chose to move on, I purchased their share and became the sole owner. I didn't put my name on anything. I created a company to handle all public dealings so no one could link the hotel back to me. I wanted privacy, not recognition. In that quiet corner of a new state, I rebuilt more than a business. I rebuilt myself. Turning the old hotel into something special took patience, long hours, and countless decisions, but the effort slowly changed everything. The building had good bones, but it needed a fresh vision. I changed the layout, upgraded the rooms, and brought in features that made guests feel like they were stepping into a calm escape. Soft lighting, quiet halls, comfortable spaces, and thoughtful details turned the property into a place people wanted to return to. I focused on creating an atmosphere that felt private and welcoming. Guests appreciated being able to relax without noise or crowds. Word traveled among people who valued quiet comfort, and little by little, bookings increased. Travelers chose it because they wanted a peaceful stay, not a chaotic resort experience. That unique appeal set us apart from other places nearby. As the flow of visitors grew, so did the financial side. Each month showed better results. Staff members felt proud of the difference they were making, and the positive feedback pushed us to work even harder. What had once struggled to stay afloat became a popular retreat for those seeking calm surroundings and personal attention. During all this progress, my family had no idea what I was building. They assumed I had settled into an ordinary position somewhere, answering phones or filing paperwork. I never corrected their assumptions. Keeping my accomplishments quiet wasn't about hiding success, it was about protecting my peace. I didn't want questions, judgments, or any old habits from the past finding their way into my new life. The more the place thrived, the more I felt grounded in the life I created from the ground up. I watched the hotel shift from forgotten to admired, and seeing that transformation reminded me that distance from old wounds can lead to something better than I ever expected. Several years passed without a single message from anyone connected to my old life. I had grown used to quiet days and steady routines, so when my phone rang one afternoon, I wasn't expecting anything unusual. The call came from the front desk. The manager sounded tense, the way people sound when dealing with someone who refuses to listen. She explained that a family at the reservation line was demanding special treatment. They wanted bigger rooms, extra services, and early check-in without paying for any of it. According to them, they deserved it because they personally knew the owners. I almost laughed, thinking it was just another guest using excuses to get more than they booked. I asked for the last name attached to the request, expecting something unfamiliar. Instead, the manager read it out slowly, as if making sure she hadn't mispronounced it. The moment I heard it, everything inside me went still. It was my brother's name. Not only his, but also his wife's and their children's. They were trying to reserve an entire holiday stay during one of the busiest times of the year. I steadied my voice and asked the manager to repeat the name. She did, and the reality settled into place. The same family that once dismissed me had somehow ended up calling the very business they believed I could never build. They had no idea whose doors they were trying to walk through. To them, it was just another luxury retreat they hoped to take advantage of. I told the manager I would handle the situation personally and asked her to forward all details to my private office. As soon as I hung up, a mix of disbelief and calm washed over me. Life had brought them right to my doorstep, without either of us planning it. Once the reservation file reached my office, I opened it carefully, unsure of what I might find. The notes written by the staff painted a picture I hadn't expected to see again. It didn't take long to understand that things were falling apart on Carson's side of life. The details were clear and direct, added by employees who had no idea they were speaking about my own family. The first note explained that the person making the request mentioned a new venture that hadn't worked out. Another line described missed payments connected to some property under his name. The words hinted at more than just a small setback. As I read further, I saw comments about overdue statements and warnings tied to a house he occupied with his family. The note said the place was at risk of being taken if the situation wasn't fixed soon. A few lines down, another staff member wrote that he kept talking about wanting to make a grand impression on people related to his wife. He spoke loudly about having direct access to someone powerful at the hotel. He claimed he had guaranteed upgrades and personal treatment because he had close ties with the owner. He repeated it with full confidence, as if saying it enough times could make it true. The tone of the comments showed that the staff found the whole story suspicious, but they stayed polite. They recorded every detail so the management team could decide how to respond. Reading those words, I felt a strange mixture of distance and clarity. I wasn't shocked that his plans had collapsed again. What surprised me was how far he had gone to impress people who weren't even part of our complicated past. Seeing his situation written in plain text made the truth impossible to ignore. His choices had led him here, right into the lobby of a place he never imagined belonged to me. After reviewing everything, I knew I needed to be there myself. I booked a quiet flight and arrived without announcing my presence to anyone except the manager. The staff only knew that the owner would be staying on-site for a private visit. I moved into the top suite reserved for me, a space kept ready at all times. From there, I could oversee the situation without attracting attention. Before settling in, I met briefly with the department heads. I told them I would personally take charge of the guest causing trouble. I kept the explanation short. No one questioned it. They were used to unusual instructions from me, delivered without long stories. I stressed that the guest should not receive any special treatment and that all policies should be followed strictly. The next morning, I slipped into the small office overlooking the main reception area. The glass was dark from the outside, allowing me to observe everything without being seen. I didn't wait long before Carson arrived. He marched up to the counter with loud confidence, acting as though the place belonged to him. His tone was sharp, demanding the most expensive suite as if it were already guaranteed. He claimed he had direct contact with the owner and threatened to make a call if the staff didn't give him exactly what he wanted. He talked about upgrades, private services, and arrangements he insisted were already approved. The employees stayed calm, reminding him that everything had to follow the system. His irritation grew with every polite response. Watching him from behind the tinted glass felt surreal. He had no idea I was only a few steps away, seeing every gesture, every complaint, every empty threat. I remained silent, waiting for the right moment to step forward. Finally, I walked out of the office. The cool, quiet confidence I had built over the years followed me into the lobby. Carson froze instantly. The smugness that had filled his voice disappeared the moment he saw me standing there. I could see the color drain from his face. Every word he had used to belittle the staff and insist on special treatment vanished, replaced by confusion and fear. His wife, trying to recover the moment, stepped forward. She spoke quickly, with that practiced charm, suggesting that perhaps everything could be fixed if I simply treated them as family. She asked if I could cover the cost of their stay, throw in upgrades, and make the holiday special. The words dripped with expectation, as if I would comply without question. I smiled, slowly, letting the moment linger. Not the smile of warmth, but one of control, of understanding exactly the position he had put himself in. I let my eyes meet his for a few seconds, just long enough for the reality to sink in. He recognized it too late. The person he had dismissed and betrayed for years was the very one holding the power he had assumed was elsewhere. Then I spoke, calm and deliberate. "I don't recognize people who owe me nearly $500,000, I said. Every word carried the weight of years spent in silence, of careful planning, and of patience that had finally reached its limit. Carson tried to protest, but his voice faltered. His wife looked shocked. Even the children sensed the tension, standing still as the truth settled around them. For the first time, he understood exactly what it meant to be powerless in a situation he thought he controlled. In that moment, the past and present collided, and I held the balance. I shook my head slowly, keeping my voice calm. "I'm afraid your booking cannot be confirmed," I said. I didn't need to add much else. Behind the words was the reality, unpaid balances from years ago. It wasn't an excuse, it was truth. The front desk staff, trained to follow procedures without bending, quietly began canceling their reservations. Carson's face fell as he realized the full weight of the situation. The confident tone he had used for months disappeared completely. He opened his mouth to argue, but I stayed still, letting him see the limits of his control. Around him, other guests watched the scene unfold. Some whispered. Others stared, wide-eyed at the unfolding drama. His wife stepped forward quickly, raising her voice and gesturing wildly. She tried to convince me that it was all a misunderstanding, that this was an emergency, that the hotel should show consideration for family. She kept speaking, but the staff remained firm. They had instructions, and nothing she said could override them. Meanwhile, the children clung to her, whimpering and glancing at their father, confused by the tension. The in-laws looked on, faces tightening with disappointment and disapproval. Every gesture from them reflected the truth Carson had been avoiding. His pride and bravado had failed him. Finally, Carson's voice cracked. The arrogance vanished entirely. He looked at me, desperate, ashamed, and whispered something I never expected, an apology. "Please, just this once, help me," he said, almost pleading. It was a voice stripped of pretense, a man reduced to begging for something he had no right to demand. In that lobby, surrounded by strangers and family alike, He was no longer the person who thought he could take advantage. For the first time, the consequences of his actions were unmistakably clear. I held the silence for a moment longer, letting the air in the lobby settle. Carson looked at me, hope flickering in his eyes, as if my agreement could undo the years of mistakes and pain. I shook my head gently, feeling a calm I hadn't felt in a long time. The anger that had simmered for years had finally transformed into clarity. I would not let him take advantage of me again. "Carson," I began, my voice steady, "I've spent years picking up the pieces of what you broke. I've rebuilt myself, my life, and my peace. That doesn't mean I'll let anyone walk over me a second time." I watched his shoulders slump. For a brief moment, the proud, reckless man I knew seemed tiny, exposed, and entirely human. I reached into my bag and handed him a small card. On it were the details of a reputable financial counselor I had trusted in the past. I wanted him to have a chance to fix his life, but I made it very clear that my involvement ended there. "This is for guidance, not for bailouts," I said. "It's time you learned to stand on your own." He swallowed hard, words stuck in his throat. I stepped back, letting the truth sit between us. "Family doesn't mean you get to destroy me twice," I added, my eyes meeting his with unwavering resolve. Every syllable carried the weight of past betrayals, silent sacrifices, and the boundaries I had fought to establish. His gaze dropped, shame written across his face. His wife and children looked confused, realizing the distance that had grown between us could not be bridged with empty apologies. I turned away, calm but resolute, leaving him with nothing but the reality he had created for himself. For the first time I felt the full power of my choice, not revenge, but finality. After leaving the lobby, I returned to my suite, closing the door behind me. The quiet of the room felt like a balm on my nerves. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to breathe without tension or expectation. The confrontation was over, and with it, the weight I had carried silently for so long finally lifted. I didn't plan punishment, nor did I wish it. What happened in the lobby wasn't revenge, it was the natural consequence of choices made long ago. I poured a cup of tea and looked out over the hotel grounds. The lights glowed softly, reflecting the peaceful order I had built. Guests wandered the halls with calm smiles, unaware of the drama that had briefly touched the building. My thoughts drifted to Carson. His failed attempt to manipulate the system and insist on special treatment had humbled him in ways I couldn't have orchestrated. The embarrassment, disappointment, and shock he felt would likely remain with him for a long time. Meanwhile, life inside my hotel continued exactly as I intended. Staff members treated each other with respect, and guests expressed gratitude for the care and attention they received. This was a space built on effort, integrity, and understanding, qualities that had been ignored in my family's household for years. I felt satisfaction in knowing that my work and patience had created something far stronger than resentment. I realized that true justice doesn't require anger or retaliation. Seeing Carson confronted by his own actions, while I remained calm and secure, was enough. I continued running the hotel, growing it carefully, surrounded by people who recognized my value. For the first time, I felt entirely in control of my life. The past could no longer touch me. I had built a life that rewarded loyalty, effort, and honesty, principles Carson had never respected, yet now, by facing their consequences, he would finally understand.